It's a little bit hard. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a pizza stone. I'm gonna be making pizza, and when I bring this up to a really high temperature, I put my dough on it, it's gonna form a nice crust on the bottom. That's the difference between a restaurant pizza and a home pizza. Pizza begins with the dough. I wanna preheat my oven to 400 degrees. Like any dough, it begins with yeast. The yeast is what will make the pizza dough rise. It's actually a living ingredient, and it needs to feed off of something sweet. So first, 2 teaspoons of yeast, 1 teaspoon of white sugar. This will feed the yeast. And I have 1 cup of warm water here. This will start frothing up in about 4 to 5 minutes, just in about the exact amount of time when I'll need it. Because we've entered the realm of baking, baking is much more like a science than cooking. Is so tactile and you feel it. So I want to make sure I measure these ingredients properly. So I have 1 tablespoon of salt, 3 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. So there's 3 1/4. Perfect. You're thinking, why is he using white wine? So what happens is with the yeast, the white wine will help the yeast to ferment and add a nice sort of tart sourdough flavor. So I want 1/4 cup of white wine and 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Wow, that's really annoying. Now all my wet ingredients will be added into these dry ingredients. I'm gonna pulse it a little bit, do a little at a time. You see my yeast has started to froth, tells me that it's alive, and kick it. So I'm gonna add that in. Make sure I get all of the yeast from the bottom in there. And I'm just pulsing it so they can incorporate slowly. So now my dough is starting to come together. Let's start with a little bit of dusting on the board. Just dump my dough out. Nice warm dough. Smell that yeast and the wine. Now, I still want to knead the dough because I want to work the gluten. And when I'm kneading, you notice I'm pulling it towards myself, pressing with the palms of my hands, turning it again, folding it in, pressing with the palms. I actually love kneading dough. It's like one of those things that makes you connect with your food, you know? It's so tactile. So you want to knead it until you get a nice, smooth dough that bounces back to the touch. It's like a baby's bottom. All right, but I want this dough to double in size. And the yeast is gonna feed off of that starch and the sugar, get in there, and it's gonna start. So next, just lightly oil the bowl like this, so that as it starts to rise, a little bit of oil will help it just slip up and not stick so much. We wanna keep this dough in a warm place. For me, that's over here. It's a cozy spot. Gotta tidy up a little bit. Fact of the matter is, pizza needs garlic. I wanna make a garlic paste that's gonna spread on the base of my pizza. So, I'm gonna roast this garlic. I drizzle it with a little bit of oil to help transfer the heat. I wanna season it with a little bit of black pepper and a little pinch of salt. A little bit of water prevents the garlic from burning. Chef at a restaurant taught me that. Just bundle it up, throw it in my oven, 400 degrees. In about 15 to 20 minutes, I have beautiful, soft, buttery, roasted garlic. Then it's time to start making pizzas. Whether you say tomato, or pomodoro, it doesn't make a difference to me. It's all going on top of my pizza. I'm gonna use the meat of this tomato instead of making a sauce to top my vegetarian pizza. My pizza dough is almost doubled, and I want to get my second pizza stone in at a 550-degree oven so it gets nice and hot. Now, my grandmother taught me how to make pizza via Trinidad, but really it's rooted in Italy. I'm gonna first start by making a margherita pizza, which is a simple pizza that emulates the colors of the flag of Italy: red, white, and green. My dough, see, is nice, tender, resilient. So what I like to do is just to deflate some of those bubbles that have been created by the yeast and the dough rising. And I'm gonna cut this into 3 equal parts. Just gonna roll these into balls. 1, 2, 3. This pizza dough I'm gonna form into a round. Where's my, My wife keeps me moving this stuff around, you know? Okay. So whenever you're rolling doughs, you start from the center and move outwards. Center, outwards. That way you can control how you're rolling it. If you want to get a nice round shape, it's easier to get a round shape by doing that. And flip it every now and then. Helps to make a nice even roll. This is a fancy tool called a pizza peel. It allows me to transfer my pizza, but you want to make sure that you dust it liberally with a little bit of cornmeal. See, they're like little balls, and it's gonna allow my pizza to just roll off as though they're ball bearings. Now, I've seen a lot of people try to transfer pizza dough like this. They grab it and then they tear it. I'm gonna show you a good little trick, okay? Fold it in half, fold it in a quarter. You maintain the integrity of the dough, and that would make my grandmother very happy, which makes me very happy, okay? Now we gotta put some of our margarita toppings on it. Now, you can use fresh tomatoes, but the next best alternative would be use canned tomatoes. Canned tomatoes are canned at the peak of their season, and I don't want too much of the liquid. I just wanna take these tomatoes and just tear them up. Nice and simple. This is a rustic home-style pizza. That's a technique you learn in the Chinese restaurants. So I'm just gonna distribute those evenly around. Buffalo mozzarella. You always wanna make sure you're buying buffalo mozzarella submerged in a liquid like this. It's actually a saltwater brine solution. It helps to keep it set, but also it seasons it as it's setting up. Oh my, yeah, that is a beautiful thing. A little bit of restraint never hurt though. Okay, so I just wanna squeeze out this extra milk, because when it goes into the oven, it starts to render moisture, but we don't want wet pizza, right? So I'm just gonna tear it, sprinkle it around, and it's gonna melt and get soft and ooze. And some olive oil. This is rustic style, baby, rustic styles. It keeps the dough nice and soft and supple, but most importantly, it'll start to fry the outside edges of the crust to get nice crunchy bits, right? You see how that moves with my little ball bearings? So while that's cooking away, I'm gonna make an antipasti. Antipasti simply means before the meal in Italian. It begins actually with a lemon zest. Give that a chop-o-rama. All right, partner. We're gonna chop a little bit of parsley. I wanna chop the parsley fairly fine, and that looks good to me. Right. Bit of breadcrumbs. That'll help bring it all together. I wanna see sort of even distribution of parsley and breadcrumbs. Wanna season it with some salt. Boom! A little bit of black pepper. It really won't get any simpler than this. We're just gonna tear the buffalo mozzarella into the dish, so it's one even layer, sort of. We're gonna sprinkle some of my goodness top. Capers! And if you really don't like capers, you can leave them out. But personally, I really look for a little bit of that salty bite, because the buffalo mozzarella is fairly mild. A little bit of sweetness to cut that will come in the form of some honey. I just want to drizzle some honey. Just enough to give it a little bit of sweetness. I have a friend who's a freak for honey, and she likes to dip fries in honey, like just caked with honey. Gonna set this aside and check on my roasted garlic.